Hello and good evening, everybody, and I'd like to welcome everyone back to tonight's episode. And I thought it would be a very good idea to return to a game that I've been doing for quite a while now, and it's called Face Off. And the way that this works is I pick two artists that have some kind of similarity to each other, and I'll explain why in a second. But the way this works is I go through a series of rounds where each round I compare, first of all, their first album to each other and I declare a winner. Then their second album to each other and I declare a winner. Then their third album to each other and declare a winner, all the way until we're at the end. And by the very end, whoever has won the most amount of rounds is the winner. And I have chosen to focus tonight on Ozzy Osbourne versus Dio. And yes, I can imagine that this is going to get some people rather passionate because I have done several episodes on these two artists before, and the comment section really started to blow up whenever I started talking about these two artists. So just remember, keep it civil, no personal attacks, and if I make a gaffe, please just politely correct me in the comments and everything will be good to go. But anyways, why am I comparing these two artists? Well, for the simple reason, they were both once the singer of Black Sabbath, and they both parted ways with Black Sabbath pretty close to each other, one right after the other. Ozzy, of course, in, I think 1979, I want to say, he was let go to his drug usage. Yes, Black Sabbath had a problem with his drug usage. That is saying something. And then he was replaced by Ronnie James Dio in the year 1980, and he did not last very long. He had a very short tenure, and he was let go in the year 1982, allegedly stemming from allegations that for one of their live albums, he snuck into the studio and actually started messing with the balance of the vocals and the instruments in an effort to turn up the vocals and make his voice a lot more prevalent than it was initially intended to. From what I understand, that story is actually not true, so just want to be fair and get that around the table. I do not think that story is true, but regardless, there was some turmoil between Dio and some of the other members, so then he was let go. After both of these artists left Black Sabbath, they began a solo career of their own, and they were both very, very successful. So let's not waste any more time, and let's dive right on into this thing. We are going to start with round number one. Round number one is going to have Blizzard of Oz by Ozzy Osbourne versus Holy Diver by Dio. Now, this was my very first Ozzy album that I ever bought. It was all the way back in 9th grade, actually. And I think it starts out very, very strong with I Don't Know. Okay, it just sort of fades in kind of gradually. Then we just have a very thunderous guitar riff from the one and only Randy Rhoads. And it's down, 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 and it's just amazing. I think that this lineup that Ozzy Osbourne had was just really, really phenomenal. It was Ozzy on lead vocals, Randy Rhoads on lead guitar, Bob Daisley on bass guitar, and Lee Kerslake on the drums. And I Don't Know is just a very, very dark yet very, very fast number, and I just think it's phenomenal. Then, of course, we have Crazy Train. Heard it a few too many times, and I know I'm not the only one who feels that way. Goodbye to Romance is a pretty solid ballad. He loves to have a ballad as the third track on a lot of his albums. Just something I've noticed, but I mean, there is a pretty good guitar solo in there, so I respect it for what it is. Suicide Solution. Very, very crunching guitar riff. Very, very dark and brooding. I really like it. Mr. Crowley. I did not really take too kindly to this one when I initially heard it, but I have really warmed up to it over the years. It has a very dark intro, which sounds a lot like the intro to the Black Sabbath title track, believe it or not, but it's filled with this very, very demonic organ going on, and just something about it kind of works. It's another very dark and brooding song, very much delving into the occult and satanic themes, but I think it works pretty well. No Bone Movies is kind of disposable, but man, Revelation Mother Earth. It took me decades to warm up to this one, and I really love Revelation Mother Earth, sorry. Has a very needlework-like acoustic guitar at the very beginning, but man, it picks up and it ends very well, and it segues very nicely into the closer, Steal Away the Night. Now, Holy Diver, on the other hand, fares pretty well also. I mean, it comes right out swinging with Stand Up and Shout. What an anthem. Holy Diver is the title track. This one, much like I Don't Know, has a rather interesting intro in the sense that it starts out very dark and murky and just starts building and building and building. And overall, I really do like it. I think the rhythm isn't quite up to what Dio is capable of, but that's okay. Gypsy, pretty good rocker. So is Caught in the Middle and Don't Talk to Strangers. Let me back up for a second. On Blizzard of Oz, Goodbye to Romance was kind of Ozzy's way of saying goodbye to Black Sabbath. And I think Don't Talk to Strangers is kind of Dio's way of saying goodbye to Black Sabbath. It's quite interesting. But then we have Straight Through the Heart and Invisible. That is a song that starts out very, I don't know, it sounds almost whiny at first, if that makes any sense or anything. But yeah, once it gets going, once it gets moving, it really is a great song. Rainbow in the Dark is probably the best song on here. It's got kind of a keyboard rhythm going with it that kind of keeps the beat. It's quite interesting because keyboards didn't commonly show up on a lot of his records. And of course, Shame on the Night closes things out very well. But to be brutally honest, guys, and to be perfectly honest, Holy Diver is a great debut, but it's no match for Blizzard of Oz. Ozzy is going to win. So that is 1 round for Ozzy Osbourne and none for Dio. So now let's move on to round number 2. We have Diary of a Madman versus The Last in Line. And guys, I know what you're probably saying to yourself right now. Wait, he has the 2002 remastered version of Diary of a Madman. That's the version where they removed all the bass and the drum parts and they replaced them, and it sounds terrible. How can he ever listen to that garbage? Well, guys, I got the 2002 remaster because I like the artwork better. However, if you look right inside, yes, there's the 2002 remaster, but look right there. I've got the original mix right there, so now that we got that out of the way, let's actually talk about the album. Diary of a Madman is one of my favorite albums ever, okay? It has some of Ozzy's very best work on here. Over the Mountain, what a stonery rocker, I love it. Flying High Again, another very stonery rocker, but again, it's got still kind of a slow rhythm to it, at least not a very fast rhythm, but man, it works so well. Yeah, Mama's Gonna Worry, I've been a bad boy. One of my very favorites from when I was a kid. I love You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. Even though it's a ballad, it's got the best emotional punch behind it. And again, Randy's needlework guitar work is just so phenomenal. I just love his guitar playing, and we lost him way too soon. Believer is great. Little Dolls I have really warmed up to in my latter years. It was always one of those songs that I kind of skipped over whenever I put this album in the CD player, but man, I really like it. Tonight, yeah, we've kind of been over this. It's not really my favorite. It's still kind of slow, and I don't know, it's probably, other than You Can't Kill Rock and Roll, it's probably the closest this album comes to a ballad. But SATO, I do not believe it stands for Satan and the Occult, so let's get that out of our heads. Another great rocker, but man, the title track. Again, we have, just like Revelation Mother Earth, we have Randy's very dark and gloomy needlework, acoustic guitar work going on, and it works so well. Man, the ending is just a theater of madness. It's just incredible. Last in Line is also a very great Dio album. I mean, it kicks off very well with We Rock. Kind of stumbled over myself. We Rock, the title track. I love the title track. It starts out like the intro almost sounds like a pop song, if you can believe it or not, but after that intro, which lasts like 30 seconds or so, man, it gets cranking, and it's just such an anthemic number. I love it, because we'll know for the first time if we're evil or divine. We're the last in line. Da-da-no-no-no, da-da-no-no-no. Breathless. Pretty good rocker. Same thing with I Speed at Night. Very dark also. I love it. One Night in the City. Evil Eyes is also great. Mystery is what I believe to be kind of his attempt to get a radio hit, and it's not a bad song, but at the same time, it's probably kind of teetering on pop rock, but it never really fully goes completely in that direction. But I do like Eat Your Heart Out, and then of course we have the mystical and the magical Egypt, the Chains Are On. Very reminiscent from the Gates of Babylon from the Rainbow Days. It's not quite as good as Gates of Babylon, but still, this is a very great album, a very underrated one. But once again, it's no Diary of a Madman. Ozzy Osbourne is still going to win this round, and we now have 2 rounds for Ozzy and 0 rounds for Dio. Again, both classics, but one has to be better than the next, or the other. So that brings me to round number 3. We have Bark at the Moon versus Sacred Heart. And as I'm sure you know, guys, Bark at the Moon was the very first album without Randy Rhoads. He tragically died in between albums, and he was replaced by Jake E. Lee, who I do think is a very, very competent guitarist. And I mean, just look at what's on here. There's some great stuff on here. Of course, we have the title track. The title track comes on the radio quite often, at least back when I used to work at the pool and they put the radio on. I heard Bark at the Moon all the time. You're No Different. I think we have kind of a misstep here. This one is very synthesizer-led, and it's kind of slow, and Ozzy's really starting to sound kind of whiny, in my opinion. I've never really been too big of a fan of that one. Now You See Me, Now You Don't. That kind of redeems You're No Different. It's very fast, and it's very aggressive, and I really kind of like that one. It may not be up to his best work, but still it's solid. But then we have Rock and Roll Rebel, which is probably the best song on here. He's basically telling the world, I am who I am. You cannot change me. I am going to do what I do. And when the day's boiled over, when it's boiled over and the day's at the end, I'll give you no bullshit and I'll never pretend. It is such a statement to be made, and man, it is good. Okay? Then we have Center of Eternity. This thing is dark, okay? It starts out, and we got a little demonic little choir going, oh, sets the stage very well. I mean, that thing is just demonic. And once the song starts kicking in, man, it's also got such a fast and very, very enjoyable rhythm, I'll say that. And man, yeah, I love Center of Eternity. So tired. No thank you. Slow Down. A little bit faster, a little bit more upbeat, but it doesn't really quite have much of a punch to it, in my opinion, at least. But it does end very well with Waiting for Darkness. Waiting for Darkness is a very dark number, but again, it also really, it's well written, I'll say that, and I think it is a pretty good closer. But then we have Sacred Heart, and I have heard some criticisms of this one. people saying, or I've heard people say that this was Dio trying to, appeal to the MTV crowd and get a bunch of hit music videos. And I'm sorry, I just don't really see that because I think Sacred Heart is amazing. I love the King of Rock and Roll. Very, very fast and very, very aggressive. And the lyrics slip me for the time being, but man, it's such a great song. The title track is freaking amazing. This definitely recaptures the magic of the Rainbow Days. This brings back the Dungeons and Dragons and Demons and Wizards subject matter, and it is just such a dark and such a brooding number, but man, I just love everything about it. And we'll find the sacred heart, dun 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 dun, somewhere bleeding in the night. Run for the light. And man, even when it's over, just like Stargazer, even when the third and final verse is done, it just keeps going and going and going. It's got such an amazing outro. I love it. Okay? Another Lie is a pretty straightforward rocker. I like it. Same thing with Rock and Roll Children. Love it. But man, Hungry for Heaven. From what I understand, this is on the Vision Quest soundtrack, and this may be what some people are referring to when they say that, he's trying to make a pop album. He's trying to be, hip and cool and on MTV. And yeah, I can kind of get that here, but it's still a great song. It's very emotional, and I just really love it. And how's it go? Just reach for the stars and you will find you're hungry for heaven. I love it. Okay, unfortunately, the second half kind of loses steam a little bit, but I mean, you still gotta love like the beat of a heart and Just Another Day, Fallen Angels, and man, Shoot closes things out pretty well, actually. I thought it was a very, very silly song the first time I heard it, but man, I've really warmed up to it. And yeah, I mean, I love Sacred Heart. I don't know what is up with all the criticism of this one, but I think I like it better than Bark at the Moon. I might get some flack for that, and that's okay. But I'm going to give this round to Dio. 2 rounds for Ozzy and 1 round for Dio. So let's move on to the next one. We have The Ultimate Sin by Ozzy Osbourne versus Dream Evil by Dio. Now, Sacred Heart came out in 1985. The Ultimate Sin came out in 1986. So some of the issues that were alleged on Sacred Heart might be a little bit more apparent on The Ultimate Sin. I can definitely kind of see a move towards glam metal on this one. I think the album still works pretty well, and pretty solid songwriting backs it up very well, and I think that's really what sets it apart from maybe some of the other glam metal albums that were coming out around that time. But I mean, the title track, pretty good drum intro. Dum, 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 dum. And then, of course, the band just starts fading in and fading in and fading in, and it's kind of slow, it's kind of brooding, but it's pretty dark as well, and I think it works pretty well, okay? It's only about 3 minutes and 43 seconds or so. It's a pretty solid track, in my opinion, at least. Secret Loser, maybe a little bit disposable, but man, Never Know Why. And you'll never know why we rock, rock, rock. I love Never Know Why. Same thing with Thank God for the Bomb, but man, one of the most underrated Ozzy songs ever has got to be Never. Yes, I know I just said that. This is a track that a lot of people just throw away and never really talk about, but I actually really love it, okay? It starts out with a pretty slick guitar intro by Jakey Lee, and it never really quite gets that fast, but again, the rhythm is just so incredibly good. I love it. I always thought it'd be kind of cool of him to start off his concert like this. Like, at the beginning of a concert, he had kind of a light show going on, and he's making this big, grand, epic intro, and I think it would work very well with Never, actually. It's probably never going to happen, no pun intended, but, I can still fantasize. I also love Lightning Strikes. Killer of Giants is absolutely epic, okay? I think the subject matter is about how, the world is on the brink of a nuclear holocaust, and humanity is coming so close to destroying itself. I could be wrong about that, but man, I really love Killer Giants. Fool Like You is a little bit disposable, but it ends very well with Shot in the Dark. It's probably the closest this album comes to a ballad, I would say, but I think it works pretty well, and I think it is a pretty well-written song. There have been a lot of legal battles over that song, and it has resulted in every album, whether it be a greatest hits, live album, studio album, not being remastered, and I think that's kind of a shame. Yeah, business does play a role in this. But let's look over here and see what Dream Evil has to offer. As you see right here, it starts off with Night People, and it's got kind of a synthesizer intro, which I thought was a little bit interesting. The song is good for what it is, but I don't know, the production on this one never really quite sat right with me. I mean, it's still a very solid album. It's a very good effort from Dio, and there is some great songwriting on here, but I thought the sound was always kind of flat. Again, feel free to disagree with me there. I know that there are people out there who are going to say that I'm totally wrong. It's fine. I'm just giving you my opinion, okay? The title track is pretty decent. Then we have Sunset Superman, which sounds pretty ridiculous, but I'm telling you, it totally works, okay? It's a very fast rocker, and I think it's got a tremendously good rhythm. All the Fools Sailed Away is probably the big emotional kick on this one. And, well, I gotta admit, it does kind of work. And because all the fools sailed away. Dia's got this thing where he loves to call his audience a fool for some reason. Something I've noticed. Whatever. You can call me a fool all you want as long as I get to hear your music. Naked in the Rain, it's pretty decent, but I do like Overlove. What was I saying? I Could Have Been a Dreamer, Faces in the Window are, pretty by the numbers, but the album closes very well with When a Woman Cries. Kind of a dark, kind of a misty little number. It's got a very gloomy atmosphere to it, but I mean, it's pretty solid. But anyways, this was kind of a tough decision in my opinion. I mean, I have issues with the sound of both of these, okay? Dream Evil sounds kind of flat. The Ultimate Sin is teetering on glam metal. So it really comes down to the songwriting on this one, and I think I gotta give this one to Ozzy. I probably just ticked off a whole lot of people, but again, it's my show. You can have your voice in the comments. So 3 rounds for Ozzy, and then 1 round for Dio. So let's see what round number 5 has in store for us. We have the 5th album by both artists. We have No Rest for the Wicked by Ozzy Osbourne versus Lock Up the Wolves by Dio. Now, as far as Ozzy Osbourne goes, this was his very first album with his long-running lead guitarist, Zakk Wylde. Okay, Randy was on Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. Jakey Lee was on Bark at the Moon and The Ultimate Sin. Zakk Wylde, I think he's been on pretty much most of his albums from this point on. He might have missed a couple, but he's pretty much his main guitarist. Now, looking over here, the thing kicks off with Miracle Man. And it's about TV preachers named, I think one of them named, it's about a TV preacher by the name of Jimmy Swaggart, I want to say, who criticized Ozzy over and over again for being a bad influence, for being of the devil, because of course people are going to say that. And then later, the guy was caught in a sex scandal, and this is basically Ozzy kind of sticking it to him and rubbing it in his face, and, that is a little bit satisfying, but, I mean, it is a pretty good song, and I think it flows very, very well, because I'm looking for a miracle man that tells me no lies. I'm looking for a miracle man who's not in disguise. Pretty good. Devil's Daughter, You Don't Want a Holy War. Sorry. This one's also pretty fast, and I really do like it for what it is. I think it kind of lacks the punch that some of his other material does, but Devil's Daughter, Holy War is pretty good. But Devil's Daughter, you don't want a holy war. I'm terrible. Crazy Babies is absolutely ridiculous. I do not like that song. I do not endorse it. I have never liked it. I still do not like it, and that is all I'm going to say about it, so too bad. Breaking All the Rules definitely redeems it, however. Breaking All the Rules is a very murky and very slow rocker, but solid songwriting definitely makes up for it. It's not ridiculous. It's not silly. It's very in your face and very down to earth. And it's about, breaking all the rules. We have Bloodbath in Paradise, which I believe is about the Charlie Manson murders. And it's got a little keyboard intro. I think it's keyboard, I want to say. I could be wrong. But it's a very, very dark intro and everything, and it starts to pick up, and I think it flows pretty well. This was also on the Just Say Ozzy EP, and I think that the live version fares a little bit better than the studio version, but still, I kind of like it. Fire in the Sky. Such an underrated gem. I love Fire in the Sky. This is probably the album's obligatory ballad, and yeah, I know that's a turnoff for some people, but man, I really think you need to give this one another listen, okay? It absolutely rocks, okay? The guitar is so on point there. It's not really an "oh baby, I love you so much, I want to be in your arms forever" kind of ballad. This is a very dark and murky ballad, and man, it just works so well, and the emotional kick is there. Sometimes it's not. This time it is. I really love Fire in the Sky, and I think you need to check that one back out if you haven't already. Tattooed Dancer. Very good drum intro from Randy Castillo, and it's, again, another pretty swinging rocker, and I think it is very good for what it is. And then, of course, we have Demon Alcohol, which is another song in response to Suicide Solution, where Ozzy was actually sued because, unfortunately, and I'm not trying to make light of a tragic situation, two teenagers, I believe, I could have this wrong, but I think it was two teenagers committed suicide tragically, and they had been listening to Ozzy's music, and a court case was brought against him, saying that the song Suicide Solution drove them to the act. Well, Demon Alcohol is kind of following up on that, but it is a pretty good rocker, and Ozzy's got this little thing where he goes, "Let's party!" and it's just so great. Hero, I do not believe was on the original release. It might have been a hidden track, actually, but I'm not really going to count Hero. This is a remastered version, which has bonus tracks. Only the original songs are actually being included. Lock Up the Wolves. This one definitely corrects the insufficiencies from Dream Evil, at least in my opinion. I did not really like the sound on Dream Evil. This one is a lot heavier, and it's a lot more metallic and upbeat. The bass has got more of a punch on this one, and I really, really do like it. But at the same time, I really feel like I should like this album more than I do. I mean, don't get me wrong, Wild One is a great, fast, ferocious opener. So is Born on the Sun, and it's pretty dark as well. I mean, he's got this little thing going on kind of towards the end where he goes, na 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 na. I did that terribly, but it works really, really well. I don't really like Hey Angel, but Night Music is pretty decent, and man, the title track is definitely Dio at his very best. The thing is this, I think the songs on No Rest for the Wicked are written better. I do like the sound better on Lock Up the Wolves. I think the sound on No Rest for the Wicked is a little bit flat, but I really do like the songwriting much better on No Rest for the Wicked. This is another one that I really struggled with, but I am going to give this round to Ozzy. And so that makes 4 rounds for Ozzy and 1 round for Dio. So let's move on to round number 6. And this is considered by many people to be Ozzy's best work. 1991's No More Tears. And it is up against 1993, yeah, I'll go with 1993. Strange Highways by Dio. Now, No Rest for the Wicked has the same No More Tears has the same lineup as No Rest for the Wicked. It's Ozzy on lead vocals, Zakk Wylde on lead guitar, Bob Daisley on bass guitar. Yes, he did play bass guitar on every single song. Mike Inez did not actually perform on this. He did perform on the tour, however. And then we have Randy Castillo on the drums. And there is some pretty solid stuff on here. I mean, you can't go wrong with Mr. Tinker Train, which is a warning against the dangers of child predatory predators. If that makes sense. I'm not going to say much more about that, but yeah, I mean, it's like, I got a one-way ticket, a ticket to the other side. I got a one-way ticket, so come along and I forget the lyrics, but it still goes, they call me Mr. Tinker Train, and I think it's a pretty good opener. I Don't Want to Change the World is pretty solid for what it is, but I think it flows pretty well. Mama, I'm Coming Home is an acoustic ballad, and while it's not my favorite, it does elicit the emotional punch that it's trying to. Desire is pretty disposable, but I do like the title track. The title track is about a serial killer from what I understand, and man, that bass intro, it is awesome. Mike Inez, from what I understand, wrote it, but it's actually Bob Daisley performing it, so there we go. But the song is so bizarre and so unorthodox, it actually really works. It's got a very good synth interlude, actually. Yes, I just said that. And it just sets the atmosphere so well, and again, it's just so bizarre, I just can't help but love it. Okay, it's about 7 minutes or so, which is pretty long by Ozzy standards, but man, I love it. S.I.N., not too much of a fan of that one. It's pretty disposable. Hellraiser was co-written by Lemmy from Motorhead, and I think they both did a version of this one, but I actually really like this one, okay? It's about, well, a Hellraiser, someone out there to, throw caution to the wind and just be a bad boy, but I like it. Time After Time is another ballad. It's pretty flat. Zombie Stomp and AVH I've never really cared too much for. And Road to Nowhere I initially liked back as a kid, but I'm kind of tired of it. This one, it has more of a glossy production on it. And I mean, it was released in 1991, so that might explain a few things. But yeah, this is definitely a glam metal album. Strange Highways, on the other hand, is not, okay? This thing is a full-fledged metal album. This one is so balls to the wall, I love it. Jesus, Mary, and the Holy Ghost. What an insane opener, man, it's awesome. Same thing with Firehead. Oh, I love it, so dark. But of course, we have the title track, Strange Highways, don't know. Man, that thing is so doomy and it's awesome. I love it. I also love Hollywood Black. Same thing with Evolution. Pain. Let me see if I say this correctly. Give me the choice between pleasure and pain. I choose pain. I think I said that right. Okay, whatever gets you off. Not for me to judge. But yeah, One Foot in the Grave, another great song. Same thing with Blood from a Stone. And then Here's to You. I love it. Bringing Down the Rain closes things out very well. So as y'all can tell right now, on No More Tears, I like maybe about half of it. Not too much of a fan of the sound. Strange Highways, I like pretty much every song except Pain for obvious reasons, and I love the sound. Strange Highways is going to win this round, and I know that No More Tears is one of his most successful albums of all time. I don't care. I love Strange Highways, and so that is going to give us 4 rounds for Ozzy, and then 2 rounds for Dio. So we are now up to round number 7. We have Ozzmosis from 1995 versus Angry Machines from 1996. And I'm going to tell you straight up, I hate Ozzmosis. I do not know what this is supposed to be. Well, actually, I can probably tell you exactly what it's supposed to be. It's Ozzy banking off of what was popular at the time. You can tell this was made or recorded in 1995. It does not sound like Ozzy. It sounds more like Soundgarden, if that makes any sense. Perry Mason is pretty obnoxious. I Just Want You is a ballad. I have heard worse ballads, but at the same time, I have heard much better ballads. The sound is too polished. It is too... I can't even describe it, I'm sorry. There are definitely synthesizers on here, but it's just, like I said, so polished and so un-Ozzy-like. Ghost Behind My Eyes is terrible. Thunder Underground. You think you live forever when you hear thunder underground. All right now. Okay, that's how it goes, okay? The first time I heard it, I was like, this is awful. But if you kind of turn your brain off and just accept that you're listening to crap, it does kind of work. See You on the Other Side, that actually is a pretty good song. I'll give Ozzmosis credit for that one. I actually do really like See You on the Other Side. It's very gloomy, it's very dark, but again, the emotional kick that it's going for, it really, really works, okay? The second half, there is not much memorable about that one. Denial, I will say this. There was a time, back when I was like 16 or 17, where I was trying to go to sleep, and I couldn't get to sleep. Insomnia is something I have always struggled with, and Denial was in my head the entire time. Totally grating on my nerves. And that's all I'm going to say about that one. But yeah, the album itself is pretty terrible. Angry Machines, I think, is a very good follow-up from Strange Highways, okay? It's got, again, a very, very slick production. I mean, the production is a lot, let me back up. The production is a lot more slick than maybe some of the previous Dio albums, but I mean, that doesn't mean it's bad. It actually works very well. Institutional, man, kicks it off so well. Same thing with Don't Tell the Kids and Black, okay? Hunter of the Heart, I think, is a pretty solid number. Stay Out of My Mind. That's probably one of the more obnoxious songs and not quite my favorite, but it's okay? The album's pretty solid for what it is. Big Sister, good. Double Monday, I love. Same thing with Golden Rules. This Is My Life is a ballad. It closes the album with a ballad. That was never even really alluded to in the previous 9 songs. I'm not quite sure where this is coming from. It's very out of place. I can't really quite endorse that one, but the album itself as a whole is pretty solid, I gotta say that. And I definitely like Angry Machines a lot more than Ozzmosis. I know that's not really saying much, but this round is going to go to Dio. So there we go, 4-3. So what do we have now? Round number 8. Yes, it is round number 8. We have 2001's Down to Earth versus 2002, I might be wrong, Magica. And Down to Earth, guys, was the album that was out right when I started getting into Ozzy. And this was the one where the songs were coming on the radio, so I knew some of the songs from the radio. And I actually got this for Christmas of 2001, actually. Yes, it was my sophomore year of high school. My mom actually got me this for Christmas. I was like, wow, awesome, the new Ozzy album. And I mean, there is some stuff to like on here. Gets me through, I think, is a pretty solid opener. The keyboard intro or the piano intro, I definitely could have done without, so I'm not really going to give my endorsement there. But the song itself is pretty solid. And how's it go? I'm not quite the person you think I am. I'm not the Antichrist or the Iron Man. Did he just say he's not the Iron Man? Oh, come on, man. You know, be proud of who you are, okay? You're crazy. You're a madman. You're insane, okay? Just be you, okay? But I mean, it's pretty good for what it is. Facing Hell, I really do like this one. This one also has a keyboard intro, but even though it's really more synthesizer instead of piano, it's so dark and it sets the stage so well. I really like Facing Hell. A very dark, demonic, gloomy number, but man, it just so works. I believe it was George W. Bush who actually said that he liked that song, so more power to him. Dreamer is crap. Okay, it's some whiny hippie song all about how bigotry is so awful. We all need to love each other. Give me a break, man. What's the next one? No Easy Way Out. That one's pretty solid. Not that great, but it's still pretty solid. That I Never Had. I actually really do like that one. Okay. Running Out of Time is another ballad, and at first, you know, when I'm just a kid, I kind of liked it at first because, you know, I thought that it was kind of flowing pretty well, but the more I heard it, the more I started to dislike it. But really, the highlight of this album is the closer. Can You Hear Them? Another very dark and very, very thunderous closer. I actually really like that one. Let's go ahead and see what Dio has over here, okay? Now, what you need to know about this one is this is a concept album. It is telling a story. I do not know what the story is. I am not going to try to explain it because I don't know it, okay? If you are very into this concept, if you know what all these various chapters are telling us, that is awesome. I think that's great. I, however, do not know the story, like maybe I know some of the King Diamond stories, so sorry. But yeah, you can tell this is a concept album without ever actually knowing it's a concept album. Because this thing has spoken interludes, it has intros, it has all kinds of stuff that kind of like separates all the different movements within the story. I mean, that's fine, everything. And actually, Dio is the king of storytelling. I mean, just look at his stuff in Rainbow. It was absolutely phenomenal. I think I prefer it when Dio keeps his storytelling contained to one individual piece and not having an overarching storyline going out through his entire album, okay? And the music itself, it's not bad, okay? It's just something about the sound doesn't quite do it for me, and I'm sorry if you really like this one, but just something about the sound sounds kind of flat to me. It just never really quite gripped me the way some of the other Dio albums did. And that's fine. And like I said, I know there's a lot of people out there who like this one. Now, earlier in this episode, I said I was not counting some of the tracks on some of the Ozzy albums because they were bonus tracks and they were not on the original release. So therefore, they did not go into my consideration. Well, the 14th track is called the Magica Story, where Dio, for 18 minutes, tells the story of whatever this thing is supposed to be about. Now, guys, I very well could easily say this is a great album if you just ignore track 14. Well, guys, track 14 is still on the album. It is not a bonus track. It is part of the album. So I have to count it. And quite honestly, I do not want to spend 18 minutes listening to Dio tell a story. He can tell a story as long as he sings along with it and has a band backing him up. I love that. I just don't like him reading a story to me. So, yeah, both of these are far from the artist's best work, but I think I am going to give this one to Ozzy. I just think it's a more tight, more concise album, and nothing against Magica. One day I may warm up to it, just today is not that day. So we now have 5 rounds for Ozzy, and then 3 rounds for Dio. So, round number 9. We have Black Rain by Ozzy Osbourne versus Killing the Dragon by Dio. And Black Rain was released in 2007. We had a 7-year gap in between albums, and, that's kind of significant. And Zakk Wylde was still on this one, and he's a great guitarist, but I gotta be honest, I don't think these songs are quite as strong as maybe some of his other stuff. I mean, not Going Away is an okay opener. I Don't Want to Stop is also a pretty good track, but yeah, I don't really like the title track. And which one is it? I think it's which one is it? It's I think it's the Almighty. I think it's the Almighty Dollar. I really don't like that one either. I could be wrong about that one, but I'm pretty sure that's the one that's a little bit slower, a little bit murkier, and it just did not really do it for me. So yeah, Black Rain never really never really had much of an impression on me. Killing the Dragon, on the other hand, I think is a huge improvement over Magica, okay? The production is so much better. It's much more smooth and slick, and it flows from segment to segment so much better, okay? The title track kicks things off incredibly well, okay? I really love the title track. And once again, it has a very murky intro, but man, it gets kicking, and I love it. Then we have Along Came a Spider, another very solid track. We have a song called Scream. I will get to that later. Trust me, I will. But it's a great Dio track. Same thing with Better in the Dark. Then we have Rock and Roll, and yeah, you might be thinking this is a pretty straightforward rocker and everything because it's called Rock and Roll. It actually isn't, and I think it's pretty interesting for what it was. I mean, the rest of the album does pretty well, especially Guilty. I really like that one. But yeah, overall, I think this was a pretty tough call for me, but I am going to give this round to Dio. I really do think Killing the Dragon was a much better return to form for Dio after the very ambitious and maybe overdone Magica. So yeah, Dio is going to win this round. We have 5 rounds for Ozzy Osbourne and 4 rounds for Dio. Last round right here. And by the way, I am well aware that Ozzy has 3 more albums, okay? Dio only has 1 more album. He tragically passed away after maybe a few years after his last album. I think it was like 7 years after his last album. He had rejoined Black Sabbath in a configuration called Heaven and Hell, and so that was kind of occupying a lot of his time at the time. So this was his last studio release. So guys, I cannot consider the last 2 Ozzy albums because, well, I have nothing to compare it to. But anyways, now that we have all that out of the way, we have Scream by Ozzy Osbourne versus Master of the Moon by Dio. Scream, I believe, was released in 2011, and Master of the Moon was released in 2004. Now, this was the first time ever since The Ultimate Sin that Zakk Wylde was not Ozzy Osbourne's lead guitarist. He was replaced with a fellow called Gus G, I want to say. And I think he actually has a lot to bring to the table. I think he does a pretty good job, actually. Yeah, I may have just broken the internet because I know this album has its haters. But I mean, I do love Let It Die, another very dark opener, but man, it just rocks, okay? Let Me Hear You Scream. It's probably one of the more upbeat songs on here. I love it. But really, guys, Soul Sucker. Yes, I did just say that. It's awesome, okay? So I think the production is a lot better on this one as opposed to Black Rain, and I think it's a really solid album, even though it doesn't have Zakk Wylde on it. Gus G does a pretty good job, actually. Master of the Moon is a very good follow-up to Killing the Dragon. I think Master of the Moon still has, once again, a very slick and very, very good rhythm to it. Definitely a very good production to it. And yeah, it's very similar to Killing the Dragon in the sense that it's not a concept album. It doesn't have a whole bunch of interconnected, interlinked segments to it, but it's very typical for what you might expect for Dio, okay? A lot of very dark, very fantasy-based lyrics, and it is a pretty solid album, so I really just gotta go with my gut on this one, and I actually think I'm gonna give this round to Scream, just because the sound, I think, is a tremendous improvement, and I think it really elevates the album compared to what came before it. So I'm actually going to give this round to Ozzy, okay? So those are the final results. 6 rounds for Ozzy Osbourne and 4 rounds for Dio. A very, very definite close match, if you don't mind me saying so. But Ozzy Osbourne is the winner, and so I want to say thank you all very much for joining me tonight. This was I really enjoyed this episode of Face Off, and I am actually running out of episodes of Face Off, so I may only have 1 or 2 left, actually. I might have to find something else to do after that, but still, I have really enjoyed this for what it was, and I could not have done it without you people. So anyways, hopefully I'll be back next week, but until then, we wish you well, and have a very pleasant evening.